Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about the deadlift, which is my favorite exercise. And one of my pet peeves is when people call the deadlift a dangerous exercise or a high risk exercise, and the reality is it really isn't. And I'd argue that it is no more dangerous than most other exercises we do in the gym, and arguably less dangerous than a lot of the recreational and sports activities that people do both in competition and recreationally. There's a lot of sporting activities that have a much higher risk than performing deadlifts. And I think where the confusion comes is that the deadlift is a high fatigue exercise. It's not a high risk exercise, it's a high fatigue exercise. And the reason that's important is because stimulus to fatigue is something that we look at for our overall gains. But also, when we start thinking of fatigue, this is where injuries come from. In other words, as you get very fatigued, form can degrade. People start doing stupid things, trying to get more reps, and so on and so forth. And this is where your injuries occur. They're either overuse related or they are just bad form being induced from fatigue and people trying to just keep pushing through. And I'll give you guys some examples. Touch and go deadlifts, right? People who are trying to, get more reps on the deadlift because the fatigue is so high and it's so difficult when it's moderately heavy to get reps at all sometimes off the floor. They'll go to touching and going, and then it turns into a bounce. All right, I've seen a few times, I've definitely seen bicep tears occur when people are touch and going, particularly doing AMRAP sets, right, where they're trying to get every last rep they can while bouncing the weight off the floor instead of doing a full reset. I've seen bicep tears. Every single lower back injury that I personally know of, okay, and I'm not saying this is universally true, this is my N=1 anecdote, every single one of them have been from people who are touch and going deadlifts. And I've seen serious injuries occur there. And I'm not saying touch and go is dangerous for everyone. There's a few very advanced elite powerlifters who can make good use of it because they learn to stay really tight on their touch and go. It's almost a Romanian deadlift. Like they're touching and going, but it is almost an RDL. It's a really controlled eccentric. And then a light touch, and then they're coming back up. Okay, they're not letting it bounce or have any momentum. That momentum gets dangerous. AMRAPs can get dangerous. Right? People, when they start getting fatigued, what happens? They start trying to squat the weight up. And they'll have arm bend. This is where bicep tears occur. But here's the thing with that. They're not performing a deadlift. All right? If you're squatting the weight up, you're performing a squat off the floor while holding the bar in your hand. It's not a true deadlift. And it's bad form. Okay? It's bad form, particularly if it allows your arms to bend. But what happens is people get really fatigued on the movement. Well, that starts occurring. But if you notice, most of my lifters, and myself included, we don't do a lot of true rep work on the deadlift. You'll see speed pulls, right? This is what I'm performing here, speed pulls against bands or chains. I could do more reps than that, but we take short breaks, we come in and we focus on every rep. Okay, so the programming end is a big deal, all right, because overuse is a big deal too. We'll get to that a little bit further when I talk about speed pulls. All right, what's the number one cause of injuries in the gym? What's the research show? It's overuse. Too much work at the same angles and movement patterns. Too much work chronically causes inflammation of tendons and connective tissue that eventually snap easier. All right, but overuse occurs with curls. In fact, curls are one of the highest overuse injuries that require surgery of anything that surgeons see. All right, but we don't classify the curl as a dangerous exercise because most people with common sense realize you shouldn't be doing 15 or 20 sets of curls in a workout. Okay, anyone with common sense knows this. Because a few bodybuilders do it, who oftentimes bodybuilders are really beat up too. Doesn't mean you should do it. There's no reason to. There's no scientific reason to do that many sets of curls in one workout. But I mean, if you're doing silly shit like that, of course, even curls start becoming dangerous. But we can avoid overuse by looking at the way that we program, doing stuff like, again, the speed pulls. Okay? If we limit ourselves to close to max variations, training maxes like what you see me doing in this video, some deficit pulls that are pretty heavy. I think I pulled a 565 in this clip, from a deficit. It's obviously not the most I've deadlifted. You guys have seen me do 625 before, right? At least prior to making this video. Who knows when this video will be out. But same thing here. I think I've got 555 plus chains on, right? These are not all out 100% maxes. They're challenging singles. They're good, solid training maxes, right? They're above 90%. That gives you a very profound training response. The other stuff, if you look at it, what is it? It's speed work. That's what most of my clients do. Most of our pulling is for speed. Preferably if we have it against bands or chains. We don't always have it. But dynamic effort work, all right? You don't create the same fatigue from these things. You're not just accumulating large amounts of overuse. And accordingly, the injury rates go way, way down. But look at the benefits that you gain. You gain the benefits of the deadlift. I think what people don't realize, a lot of our benefits of our deadlift are strength, just straight up brute strength. Okay? Even from a hypertrophy perspective, is anyone going to argue that speed pulls like this, let's say inside your week you do a training max and then you do other work. Well, we know that heavy singles performed before other lifts improve performance. They improve potentially hypertrophy because they improve muscle activation on subsequent sets. So you could go do another exercise that uses the posterior chain or hinges or whatever after that heavy pull, and you're going to get those benefits. All right, the speed pulls though, so there's a hypertrophy benefit there. But the speed pulls, if we're using compensatory acceleration against these speed pulls, even at the volumes we're doing, we're hitting upper threshold fibers on every rep. And you're using almost every muscle in the body. You're using 70% of the muscles in the body for it. And again, if compensatory acceleration is used, there is going to be a hypertrophic response. It's going to be largely myofibular, right? Because we're not fatiguing the endurance-based fibers as much either. So yes, it's going to be preferential in its hypertrophy. But we see the same thing. People say, well, it's too fast and it's not creating the fatigue, so there's no hypertrophy. Except that when we study box jumps, which are also compensatory acceleration, they cause hypertrophy in the lab when it's been studied. This is the same idea. But again, we're using every muscle in the body. Of course, there's going to be a response. But our overuse and our fatigue and our injury risk goes way down on this because we are not getting close to failure. We're pulling as hard and as fast as we can with manageable weights, leaving reps in reserve with calculated, programmed volume. Okay, our overuse drops to nearly zero. Our fatigue, the same fatigue that creates problems, drops to nearly zero. In fact, the argument against deadlifts for hypertrophy is the stimulus to fatigue can be a little bad. But this alleviates all of that. Okay, done properly programmed deadlifts, and I believe the conjugate method like this is properly programmed deadlifts. It's been used by thousands, tens of thousands of athletes have used this training system in a variety of sports for decades now. It's proven. It works. I consider it the proper way to program deadlifts. Okay? It's helped me get mine up over 600 in my 40s. In my 40s, guys. All right, guys. Well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys next time.